Now you've heard two very interesting American presentations, and it's now time to have our colleague from Azerbaijan, Araz Azimov, who is the Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Azerbaijan, express his views. He has been the Deputy Foreign Minister since 1994.
Don't tell us.
Okay. He graduated with honors from the School of Oriental Studies at Azerbaijan State University. And from 1984 to 1989, he worked on the Azerbaijan State Radio's Foreign Service. He has been Deputy Director of the Department of Information. He was also appointed by President Aliyev as Special Representative of the Republic of Azerbaijan on negotiations on the Armenian-Azerbaijan Nagorno-Karabakh conflict that we've already heard about. So many things have been said, and we look forward very much to hearing your opinion. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Foreign Minister Azimov.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be at one of the famous universities of the United States. During my 20 years career in MFA, out of which 15 years, as you said, I'm carrying the portfolio of Deputy Minister, I've done and delivered, you can imagine how many speeches. But I think that this particular speech is being distinguished from what I've done in the past because the topic, the major motivation standing behind this event is to celebrate the 90th anniversary of Foreign Diplomatic Service of Azerbaijan and to look at the prospects, to assess the past and look at the prospects of relationship between US and Azerbaijan. And this I consider as quite an important framework, quite inclusive one. I'm proud and I was pleased to hear from you and from other previous speakers who opened the conference words of recognition to Azerbaijan. I'm proud to represent a country not only with ancient civilization and inputs into world civilization. I'm proud also to represent a country of first democracy in the Near East, a country of first multi-fractional parliament based on ethnic minorities, a country with first women voted, elected to the parliament and served as members of the cabinet, a country of first opera, a country of first theater in the Near East, a country of first oil drill in the offshore, and the first pipeline taking this industrially exploited hydrocarbon resource to the markets. By the way, that time also the pipeline was taking that from Baku to Batumi. Nothing has changed. Technology is different. And through all these years, of course, foreign policy of Azerbaijan was most challenged. For all these years, diplomatic service of Azerbaijan was put on the edge of whatever was being done in the country. And I'm proud of being part of that. So my agreement to come to this conference was particularly motivated by all these emotional aspects. But I have no right to be emotional. I have to be pragmatically assessing the things which we have to analyze and to go forward to increase effectiveness of what we are doing. So I'm very thankful to my colleagues, to Mr. Bill Burns, to Dave Kramer, for the in-depth analysis and honest expressions of what we have heard. I consider the speeches and the contents as a friendly advice. And what is more interesting, I am fully confident that I am equally rightful to raise critical advices to my partners here. So it's a friendly talk. And I'm particularly comfortable in carrying on this friendly talk. I'm looking back to somewhat 18 years ago, just trying to find out those initial steps of United States in the region. Those steps were quite clumsy, I would say. We have a friendly talk. Sorry for expression. Sometimes I would go beyond diplomatic language. Those steps have introduced the United States to Azerbaijan with notoriously known 907 amendment, which has never been timely and which is not going to be outdated, therefore, because since the very beginning it was ill-born. It was simply turning down the reality. It had nothing to do with the truth, and it was overestimating the capacity of manipulations in certain institutions of the United States, throwing therefore the foreign policy interests of the United States and the strategy of US in the region into a very tricky space, into a quagmire, I would say, into a minefield of further mistakes. Then I'm going to the next appearance of the United States in Azerbaijan, and that was a 1-hour visit of State Secretary James Baker, my all respects to this man, with bringing 5 principles, famous 5 principles of Baker, just bringing them, putting down at the table, and leaving the country. Since that time, we never had another opportunity of seeing a Secretary of State in Azerbaijan. Amazing. I hope it will be corrected very soon. Those 2 elements, those 2 appearances, made the United States, again, more clumsy than it could be in trying to find out common language with Azerbaijan, in trying to get through a proper understanding of the issues which Azerbaijan is confronted with and which Azerbaijan was thrown into since the very first days of obtaining independence in 1991. Even some things were inherited, some things were brought about by the normal implications of a country in transit, and especially when it goes about Soviet Union collapse and all those nice things which you would remember. And this went like that, with, of course, certain participation of US diplomats, my deep respect to Jack Maresca and others, who paid a tribute, an input into the process, and therefore my tribute to them. But until 1994 September, these days, in 15 years ago, US had never a chance to feel itself really anchored in Azerbaijan. Therefore, Azerbaijan has done many great things for the United States, but the very first thing, regardless of 907, regardless of those neglectance, reluctance, ignorance, and other answers towards Azerbaijan, we got a very courageous decision of our president of that time, late Haydar Aliyev, on signing a contract which was called the Contract of Century, which has been celebrated some couple of days ago. And the importance of this decision can never be overestimated. Look at the situation at that time. 994, May 12th, ceasefire has been declared and the war was stopped. And in some 4 or 5 months, we signed a contract involving great oil companies of the world, transnational institutions, and bringing in businesses and all other presences. So the wisdom and courage behind this decision yet has to be further explored, and some of you maybe will elaborate on this further on. But we have always keep in mind that since that time, interests of United States have been anchored in Azerbaijan and therefore in the region. We have created a possibility of balance. But before you get the balance, you need the presence. And presence was not there. Presence was blocked by 907 and other interesting elements of mistaken policy of that time. So through 1994 to 1997, when President Haydar Aliyev visited Washington, and that was a historical visit, that came across the grounds of very critical situation of that time. Within the CFE framework, one here is not familiar with that? Probably all are familiar. CFE, Conventional Force in Europe Treaty, and one of those very sensitive elements of European construction of security, especially when it comes to South Caucasus. And across that ground of some critical steps taken by United States and Russian Federation within the reconsideration of some elements, putting us, in a way, into jeopardy of, let's say, imbalance of security constellations and whatever things in the region. And across that, Aliyev has been invited to the United States. And at that moment, and during that visit, leaders of both countries, Haydar Aliyev and Bill Clinton, have agreed that Azerbaijan and US may start building strategic partnership. So we are to recognize the importance of this benchmark in the development of relationship between Azerbaijan and the United States. And then the speed of events has taken us further on in developing the pipeline systems, new companies, new contracts, oil and gas exploitation issues. New horizons were opened. At the same time, security continued to be a risky thing there. And settlement of the conflict is still an unsolved issue. And still, we're trying together with the United States to further carry on this thing to the final effect. We've heard the words of appreciation of importance of Azerbaijan to the United States. But if we look in depth on that, it's not only Azerbaijan, and it's not only internal Azerbaijan's development that we can today consider as achievements and accomplishments of these strategic partnerships. Probably you would agree with me, without any exaggeration, the projects led by Azerbaijan so far have enriched economics of not only Azerbaijan, have brought stability and opportunities for democratic build-up not only in Azerbaijan but also in other countries. Georgia is one of major partners of Azerbaijan. Turkey is another partner in this triangular partnership on energy issues. I wish to have more included into this package, but some circumstances prevent. They have to be addressed further on. My understanding of the energy security is exactly the reflection which has been simply created and developed further on by Azerbaijani energy strategy. We today are maybe a single country in the region which really in practical terms have developed the diversified system of transportation of oil and gas. I would refer you to the statement of President Ilham Aliyev on 15th September anniversary meeting, and you would find out the major elements of this diversified system. So it is there. new components, new possible inputs, Azerbaijan will be ready. Nabucco is one of those. But Nabucco is a pipeline which starts not on Azerbaijan's territory. And Azerbaijan will be ready to contribute. But I think there are some other issues which have to be solved in a cooperative manner, I would say. Energy security is something what brings you not only diversification and opportunities of investments in oil and gas sectors. Energy cooperation has brought about in Azerbaijan new financial system, has improved banking, has improved business procedures. Oil companies have brought along with them other companies. And altogether, the international presence in Azerbaijan's economic system was one of those assets, important assets, which helped Azerbaijani government to get to this recognition of the first reformer or top reformer in economics by the World Bank. And here I would say that in a way this economic progress creates more opportunities for development of society and for development of the governmental institutions, and even for fighting corruption. By the way, I wouldn't relate the issue of corruption exclusively to a particular geography. Corruption is something present in other countries as well, including this country. We continue friendly talk, you remember? And fighting corruption, probably Azerbaijan is taking some courageous steps, including more adding transparency into financial procedures, including development of the oil fund, including other programs and elements in reforms, which I think will finally bring to an end, to a successful end, these efforts. So the question of fighting corruption is not limited only by law enforcement or by other measures which would be also considered as important. On the other hand, I did not measure the corruption in the United States or in Azerbaijan or in other countries. Therefore, I cannot say where it is more and where it is less. The same way that I cannot measure and did not measure the violations of human rights. This is something what I consider in a philosophical way as a matter of time, as a matter of process of development. I'm not minimizing human rights. The position of the leadership of my country is very strict on that part. The human rights is a part of security of the country. Human rights of a human being, of a member of this society, is an element of the security and stability of the country. But in some cases, as a result of language exercises, which I'm very familiar with, and myself I'm also skillful in playing words, we can take half-empty glass, we can take half-full glass. I've seen many differences in many reports on many situations in many countries, which have become a subject of such language exercises, and trained observers are very skillful in that. So I wouldn't dare using the words like lack of democratic progress in Azerbaijan. Excuse me? It is not like that. I would disagree. The issue of so-called bloggers, I understand it's not a profession. Those two guys had their own profession, so blogging is their hobby, okay. Well, have you heard that they are detained because of blogging? No, I have not heard that. So let's take issues in a serious way. On the other hand, I'm afraid more speculations on that will create a wrong practice. In a way, kind of an advice to a guy, preparing yourself for something, don't forget to put something on your blog, and then you will compensate. This is the way where we would lose the major idea. And the major idea is development. The major idea is development and providing more circumstances and more environment favorable for stability, and even educating both sides of the process of democracy building. I mean governmental and non-governmental institutions. Education is the key word here. I would wish more trained journalists to have in Azerbaijan, and not. I'm very experienced in this because I've been in many ways in contact with journalists on different occasions. I was myself part of journalism when I served in the radio, so I know the profession in a way. So these are different things, and I regret that in such at such a level things are being done and being introduced in a one-sided way. Broadcast. Can you imagine that you can come from another country to the United States and start broadcasting on national frequencies? You won't. And why should Azerbaijan be different from the United States in this on this part? Democracy is system of management. You manage your system, and you do it with certain measures to be taken and certain legislation to be obeyed by members of society. NGOs. Can you imagine that an NGO, non-registered NGO in the United States will be free to act? I don't think so. There are also many issues which have to be addressed by the United States themselves. As a friend and as a representative of a country member of the Islamic community, I really would wish United States to take very actively and vigorously the issues of violations of human rights in Guantanamo Base, in Abu Ghraib, in other messy places, and internationally transparent investigation, bringing the truth to the audience, to the international audience, will only add in creating more opportunities and more understandings in the contacts between US and the Islamic community. Probably all of you watch CNN and you know what a mess there happening in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. I have my own judgment about the situation. I have my own experience. I served as a military in Afghanistan some years ago, a bit distant in time, but this experience is very similar to what I see there in Afghanistan today. So these mistakes obviously will not take us further. And I have a right to say something, not because only of my personal experience, but because Azerbaijan is contributing to Afghanistani US policy and NATO policy and ISAF operation. We have 100 people there from Azerbaijan, which risk their lives, not being member of NATO, not being covered by Washington Treaty, by Article 5 or whatever, having no security guarantees, and only motivation is for Azerbaijan, go and support your friends. How far this kind of motivation may persist. And issues of this kind take me to the issues of new strategies. The strategies which are being elaborated now. US strategy on Afghanistan or a new NATO Euro-Atlantic strategy. And I have a voice there. I am a partner nation which is a contributor. We have been in Iraq. We now continue to assist Iraq. We are in Afghanistan and we are increasing there our contributions, not only militarily but non-militarily as well. So I disagree with a continued military focus on the ways of solution problems in Afghanistan. And I think measures should be taken not only in a military field, but in developing a political dialogue. Measures also should be taken in developing correct transformation of Euro-Atlantic strategy of NATO, giving partners more motivations and more guarantees and more security insurances. A reasonable framework which could link and connect NATO and partner nations in a time when membership, because of some circumstances, has been blocked by the developments in neighboring country. By some circumstances, we today cannot speak about concepts which have been valid some years ago. PFP as an institution was good for the beginning. This institution has to be developed further. We have suggestions on that. And I hope that the Committee of the Wise Men, led by Madam Albright, which supports Secretary General of NATO, will have a chance to look at these proposals. And that will take us to further increase the opportunities in Afghanistan. The issue of strategies is also quite relevant to the South Caucasus itself. In the region now we have some new qualities, some new developments and accomplishments. Azerbaijan is not a recipient. Azerbaijan is not desperate. Azerbaijan is self-reliable and consistent. We have economic possibilities and opportunities. We are capable, and we do. So the current situation should be considered from a point of view of effectiveness of the strategy. And today, unfortunately, although we've heard that Azerbaijan is on the table of US new administration, we feel that the time which was necessary for the new administration to start up learning and to get prepared for further interaction with the South Caucasus and with Azerbaijan has elapsed. So we expect high visits to the region. We expect more transparency on the positions of new administration. We expect statements made not in between us, but statements made publicly, known to the world community on the strategy of the United States to the Caucasus. And the strategy on its macro level should address the problems of the region proceeding from the changed circumstances. Azerbaijan is part of this process. Azerbaijan is a central player now. We are different from what we have been in some 10 years ago. So things which further should be considered, and I would like to again to start with 907, it should be repealed. We cannot wait for that when it will become outdated, because as I said, it's not outdated, and there will never be. It's simply wrong. And as affecting foreign policy interests of the United States should be repealed. We have to get further the engagement of Russia in a most effective way in the South Caucasus, and Azerbaijan has proved by its own balanced approach the effectiveness of non-confrontational policy, a balanced policy, a strategy which takes partnership inside the region. And I hope that we shall have more chances for doing that, but today there is only one unique, rare opportunity for US and Russia to cooperate effectively, and that is the issue of settlement of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. This conflict, a quite protracted one, and the settlement process becoming a geopolitically heavily charged process of a mixture of interests, of crossings of different policies, and it's quite difficult to make prognosis on future developments of that. Some today speak more extensively about very soonest progress possibilities looming on the horizon. I'm not part of that, because I have no right to be optimistic, neither pessimistic. A realistic approach to the settlement of the conflict dictates that there will be no 100% unilateral solution of that. Second, it teaches that compromises are not unilateral. Third, it takes a common ground based on the international law. And the common ground is composed of principles which create one denominator for the settlement, and that is taking the issue of a status within the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan in this case, and providing a cooperation in between communities and providing development of regional and etc., development and cooperation, etc. To come to this model, to realize this model, there are concrete steps being negotiated now. And I think that the shortest way to do that is to put the practical measures in a time frame which is being worked out or will be worked out, which will bring the solution to the issues of occupation of territories, restoration and rehabilitation, return of refugees, IDPs, re-establishment of security, guarantees for populations, and creation of environment conducive for cooperation. We've heard here today a couple of words on Turkish-Armenian rapprochement. Well, I'm not speaking on behalf of Turkey. I cannot intervene in Turkish internal policy or bilateral relations with someone else. But I can say on my side that I don't consider this process in an isolation, and I cannot. And saying it is not linked to anything else is not really consistent with the normal understanding of the situation and of the processes in the region. Second, I would also disagree that the rapprochement will be healthy input into development of the process of settlement, because my understanding of the process is quite different. Third, we continue to proceed from the position expressed by Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan and by President Abdullah Gül and by Minister of Foreign Affairs Ahmet Davutoglu of Turkey, that borders will not be open until territories are under occupation. That's it. Development of the process, nevertheless, bringing Armenia and Turkey further to an understanding on ways and future situations between two countries and ways how they're going to solve historical problems. This is a very good element, and I support both countries courageously approaching this issue. But even in this concrete, critical circumstances, this situation means something else. Once Turkey and Armenia have agreed preliminarily on something which is being now consulted to be further considered for signatures, is bringing a new quality in their conceptual visions. I think I cannot be wrong here, because I hope both countries are based on a conceptual vision of the thing which they have produced. And this conceptual vision dictates further, and especially now, steps to be taken in terms of speediest solution or breakthrough in the process of settlement of the conflict. In other words, two countries have come to this point where time dictates urgency for the settlement We have still time, and I think joint efforts, including the United States and the new representative in the Minsk group, will play positively. Otherwise, I think development in another direction will not be helpful at all to strategic partnership of Azerbaijan, Turkey, and the United States, which is crucial for the regional security. So my key words for actually to finalize my speech, my key messages are stability and security in the region, balanced non-confrontational approach, increase national capacities, support trans-regional connections of the region, and support inputs which create background for new accomplishments in energy, security, transportation fields, which actually provide the cohesiveness of the Euro-Atlantic community and the indivisibility of Euro-Atlantic area, not necessarily those political statements which have been unprepared with some speedy turns in the ways, which brought then the abrupt development of events last August of 2008. So I'm looking forward to continued dialogue. I'm looking forward to increased number of contacts between US and Azerbaijan. I'm looking forward to development of practical partnerships, and all this takes me to the recognition of the merits of strategic partnership of Azerbaijan and the United States, and to the values which we are based on, and to mutual recognition of interests which we have to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Azimov. While those of you who are interested in asking questions, the microphone is at the back of the room here. While you're lining up, can I just, I'd like to ask you a question if I could. I've just come back from Moscow with the Valdai Club, and we heard President Medvedev say that as long as Mikhail Saakashvili is president of Georgia, there really can't be any dealings between Russia and Georgia. How concerned are you about increasing instability or about the possibility of another conflict between Russia and Georgia?
Well, we have been concerned and affected seriously by developments in August 2008. You can imagine. With all those interconnections between Azerbaijan and Georgia, with all those strategically important partnerships which we have with that country, with almost 500,000 Azerbaijanis living there, and with this neighborhood and friendship developed and emerged through centuries, we are very linked. And of course, developments which have been brought about in August have come both in political, in economic, and in humanitarian ways affecting the whole region, including Azerbaijan. My friend David used the word annoyance in Baku about Saakashvili. I have not observed that. I think we are ready to cooperate with Georgian leadership, freely elected by its population. On the side of Russia and Georgia's relations currently, these bilateral relations have suffered a lot, and I agree that to take off this mess, both sides would need to take serious efforts, and I think overcoming personal relationship. Basically, as far as I remember, President Saakashvili is elected until 2013, and I don't think that the time remaining until 2013 should not be used. I think vice versa, it should be used. On the other hand, the situation in Georgia is very tricky. You know, anyone trying to address those issues cannot approach them unilaterally. This is a multilaterally sophisticated complex of issues interrelated with each other, intertwined, I would say. Very difficult to pull out one string and to take only one direction. We want stability in Georgia. We want security in Georgia. We want Georgia to be territorially integral state. And we voted, therefore, in favor of the resolution launched by Georgia recently, some couple of weeks ago, at the United Nations General Assembly.
Thank you. So we do have now time for some questions. If you could state your name and affiliation, and please, we would like questions, not long statements, because we don't have a lot of time. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Shafak Mihraleva. I'm with Azertaj News Agency of Azerbaijan. First of all, I'd like to thank the Center and the Embassy for giving us this chance to listen to an honest talk and do sort of a reality check in U.S.-Azeri relations and see where are the gaps that needs to be filled. If I may ask a question to Ambassador Azimov and Ambassador Kramer. Deputy Minister, I'd like to ask your opinion on the recent appointments by Obama administration to the key positions on the region of some of the Balkan experts. Obviously, U.S. finds it useful to utilize some of the U.S. policies that have been practiced in Balkans in our region as well. What do you how do you view this? Is there any policies that you think could be beneficial or not beneficial? U.S. policies that have been practiced before in the U.S. And a question to Ambassador Kramer. I really appreciate your criticism in a good face of friendship and strategic partnership between our countries. But I'm asking you this question because you've been to the other side. You have served at the State Department. And you mentioned for the need to push on human rights and bilateral relations. What do you think is the most effective way to do that? Because obviously those human rights reports come out every year, and if you mention yourself that the situation worsens, obviously this is not the best way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, actually I've met with some newly appointed members of State Department. And I found them quite interested and familiar with the South Caucasus, and I think that we can continue this dialogue. Second, I cannot judge on appointments of another administration. But my feeling is that the Balkans is a good classroom for a diplomat. Also, I would remember that some top diplomats of the United States starting their ambassadorial career in Azerbaijan then have been transferred to Balkans and then returning back to the Caucasus, to different countries. I think this is a normal personnel management policy. At the same time, let me not doubt on an ability of American diplomats to serve the interests of their country and not mix up Balkans with South Caucasus. Thank you.
Dave.
I wasn't asked the question about our new government officials in these new capacities, but let me just say I think it's a very impressive team. Some of the individuals named to the various positions are very good friends of mine, all of them outstanding career diplomats. So I think the new administration should be commended for the appointments it's made in this regard. I look forward to the announcement of a new ambassador to Baku. I hope that comes soon. It's important to get someone in that position. The question you did ask to me about the most effective way to push on human rights, excellent question. A few points. We can't take a cookie-cutter approach to Azerbaijan. There is no one-size-fits-all for trying to push on the democracy, human rights agenda. We have to understand and appreciate the unique characteristics of Azerbaijan as we do with any country. And we also have to recognize that Azerbaijan is not going to follow the American model. I mention Azerbaijan as a model for the region. I mean that in the loosest term possible, because each country is going to follow its own path. But we're not looking to impose our way on Azerbaijan. We're not looking to implant elements of our society and democracy in Azerbaijan or any other country. What is important, though, is to have discussions about issues that are universal in nature, universal rights. When I talk about human rights, I mean, first and foremost, rights that are universal in nature. It's very important, I think, as I said, to make sure that the dialogue on this issue is covered not just by my successor, who I hope gets confirmed very soon. I'm sorry about the last-minute hold-up in his confirmation, Michael Posner, who will, I think, do an excellent job. But it needs to be raised by other officials when they go to Baku. It's very important that visiting American officials, visiting European officials, meet with members of the opposition, with civil society, with human rights activists, with journalists, to underscore that our relationship is not solely based on government to government, but that our relationship is based on people to people just as importantly. And so I think engaging in those kinds of activities is a useful way to underscore the importance of the democratic development and human rights in Azerbaijan and the importance that those issues have in the bilateral relationship.
Thank you.
May I add on this question?
Okay.
Well, just very shortly, my understanding of this process, as I said earlier, is a development in time. And life will bring on smaller and bigger things in this way. Life will bring new challenges sometimes. And sometimes these difficulties should not be taken like a characteristics of approach. What I'm saying basically is the approach of the government or the institution to the issue of human rights. Second element, currently settlement of NK, and I agree with David, cannot be taken as an explanation for every smaller or bigger thing, but at the same time settlement of the conflict is a litmus strip on the issue of relation to democracy, because inability to recognize that there is a basis of international law, inability to go along with, in conformity with the principles, and instead of that, insistence on a violent understanding of the process of settlement through military enforced solutions is not a democracy and has nothing in common with that. Instead of that, pluralism in the society is needed to bring in this new stream of understanding on the settlement issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Javid Husseinov, and I represent Azerbaijani American Council. I had two questions, one for each ambassador. First question is to Mr. Kramer. You talked about Georgia and in the way how, you know, last war and U.S. support for Georgia has guaranteed the reduced influence of Russia in the region. But what you haven't touched upon is at what cost that came. Today, pretty much, many say Georgia de facto, but it's actually becoming de jure, lost two provinces, and they are already recognized as independent states by 3 countries. So in what way does the United States guarantee that its friends' territorial integrity is protected, and does the U.S. friendship, in this case, come at the cost of territorial integrity of a nation? And what does it mean in terms of Azerbaijan? The second question is to Mr. Azimov. You talked about the protocols recently signed on the intentions of each side, Turkey and Armenia. Those protocols actually lay out concrete deadlines, timelines, for the opening of border, reestablishment of diplomatic relations, and they do not mention Karabakh. How do you think this reflects the reality? And I understand the Azerbaijani position is based on the speeches by Prime Minister Erdogan and leading officials, but what about the deadlines? Thank you.
Thank you. David?
On the issue of territorial integrity and how to support countries in the region, this is a staple of U.S. policy, which is we stand behind the territorial integrity of these countries. What happened last August, I think, reflects terribly unfortunate developments that came at the expense of several hundred human lives. And it is something that the United States wants to ensure never happens again. Resorting to military force to resolve these problems anywhere in the region or anywhere around the world should be discouraged, and we should make every effort to try to make sure that these things don't happen again. There is no Article 5 that exists, as there is in NATO with membership for these countries. That does not mean that the United States cannot try to deploy all of its diplomatic and political efforts to work with countries in the region to sit down and talk to each other. I saw a brief news item on my way here this morning that the Georgians and Russians have agreed, based on some talks yesterday, that they'll have further talks in November about trying to implement an arrangement to avoid any future hostilities. That's very important. On the question of the recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, of course, Vice President Biden most recently explained U.S. policy, which is that we don't recognize these two separatist regions as independent states. I know Mr. Chavez has been the latest, but he follows behind Mr. Ortega. Wonderful company to keep full recognition of those two places. And I view the lack of recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, frankly, as a diplomatic failure on the Russian foreign ministry's part. That no neighbor has recognized these two separatist regions, I think underscores the danger and the fire that Russia was playing with in this case, particularly given the vulnerabilities it has in its own North Caucasus just across the border. And I hope we don't see any more of that.
Thank you.
Well, the policy of recognition probably is an artificial policy of managing the process further on, and we shall see where it ends or where it goes. On the other hand, maybe I will not run too in deep in this issue, but I've heard from some sources in Moscow that they do not exclude reunification of Georgia with Abkhazia and Ossetia. There are a lot of elements and a lot of issues which have to be considered. I hope they will be able to do so. On the deadlines, as I said earlier, the Turkish-Armenian rapprochement, conceptually shaped, has been now put on the paper. There is certain opposition to that in both countries. They have to manage this process. Probably they may sign it, but then there is a process of considerations in the parliaments and ratification. So it seems to me that the smoother way out of this, as some said, dead end, would be lying along the lines of taking urgent efforts for the settlement of the conflict. Because now what we have observed, that both countries have a conceptual vision of solutions to their bilaterals. And in this case, deadlines are not so important. They have this conceptual vision now, which creates a new opportunity and which creates some new, let's say, grounds for Armenia to be urged by US, Russia, and France as co-chairmen to take serious approaches in the Minsk group format. Azerbaijan is ready for such process, promoting further and finally elaborating the basic principles. But the principles are not yet the things done. The principles are only half of the job. They have to be translated in a practical terms of an agreement, which then starts to be implemented, and then we can speak about the progress in the settlement as it is. So deadlines here, I wouldn't say play an important role, coming back to your question.
Thank you. Next question.
My name is David Gonçan. I'm a PhD student at Georgetown University, and my question is to David Kramer. In his speech, William Burns said that more prosperity in Azerbaijan means peaceful Caucasus. But on the other hand, higher economic growth in Azerbaijan over the recent years was paralleled by even higher increase in military expenditure and threats to restart military operations. How do you look at this?
Where's Bill when I need him?
I can help. David? Friendly.
Okay.
The issue, look, democratic development depends on economic reform. You can have the best elections, open societies, NGOs operating, journalists, but if the country economically is going down the tubes, then that democracy is not going to last very long. That's why political and economic reform are very important that they go together. Equally important is that the benefits that come from economic development, from energy development, get plowed back into society so that you reduce income disparities, so that you address social needs, and so that you also provide for the security and safety of your citizens. It's not to say that military spending should be zeroed out, not at all. Azerbaijan and the government has a responsibility to protect its people. But there are a number of needs that need to be addressed, and I think it's up to the government to decide best how to do those, recognizing that addressing the needs of the population is just as important.
Well, yeah, sure. Although our Armenian student fellow shied off asking this question to me, but I can tell that in military terms, there are certain real developments, but there are also publicly speculated exaggerations. Yes, Azerbaijan has an increase in military budget, but this is a part of overall budget increase. And while Azerbaijan was spending close to $1 billion for military needs, Azerbaijan is spending more than $1 billion for education. So we have to take the whole picture and look at that in the whole complex. On the other hand, we had financial resources restrictions in the past 3 years, and also we had restrictions in military purchasing. And who can prohibit buying new military or new technologies or new arms needed for the army? So the purpose of Azerbaijan is, first of all, to increase its defense capabilities and to have a strong defense institutions and also security institutions in general. Second point, Azerbaijan is actively participating in a program of transit to NATO standards, and that also dictates new arms purchasing. Sorry, this is an opportunity which Azerbaijan is using. On the other hand, the belligerent aspect of this policy, I think, is more observed in Armenia rather than in Azerbaijan, because if you take by percentage the military budgets, GDPs, and the amounts of armies on both sides in correlation with the populations, you will see the percentage in Armenia is far more higher than in Azerbaijan. And as for usual argument coming in this, let's say, composition usually addressed to Azerbaijan on rhetorics, when Azerbaijan speaks about restoration of territorial integrity, we usually try to by this way to react and to respond to statements of Armenian leadership which actually imply separation, imply territorial dismemberment of Azerbaijan, and therefore attacking territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. So if these statements from Yerevan stop, that very day we stop reacting to that. naturally.
Thank you. Are there two more questioners there? We can take two more, and then I think we'll be breaking. Yes, next question.
Thank you. Adil Bayer from the U.S. CERES Network. My first question is to Mr. Kramer about the economic reforms. Some of the speakers here mentioned the Section 907 and some of the other impediments in the U.S.-Azerbaijani relations. There is one more sanction which is still on the books and which really impedes economic development, and that's the Jackson-Vanik Amendment of the 1974. For some reason, when it was passed in 74, it was, of course, passed against the Soviet Union, and then when the Soviet Union dissolved in 91, it got applied to all the 15 republics. So all the 15 republics have to graduate from it. Of course, half of the former Soviet Union has, but Azerbaijan and some other countries, like Uzbekistan, like Turkmenistan, which are also very important for the whole Central Asian strategy of the United States, are still under these sanctions. And the new administration has not really done anything in terms of pressuring or asking the Congress to graduate either Azerbaijan or some of the other countries in the region from this sanction. And of course, by not doing this, it prevents Azerbaijan and those other states from joining the WTO, and therefore improving transparency, improving the customs, the situation in the customs, and et cetera, on the border. So Azerbaijan can never really improve and do real economic reforms until it joins the WTO, which in itself is blocked by the Jackson-Vanik, which is still on the books, and where U.S. has not really moved in this direction at all. My second question is to...
okay, all right, we've
very,
got one
very
question.
brief question. Right. Very brief question to Mr. Azimov. The second question is, again, on the border opening between Turkey and Armenia. Of course, there are many analysts, including in Azerbaijan, which are saying that this could hurt relations and could have some dire consequences. What is your view on what could happen in terms of U.S.-Azerbaijani relations if the border does open? Thank you.
U.S.-Azerbaijani relations?
Yes, the U.S.-Azerbaijani relations if the Turkey-Armenia border opens without resolving the Karabakh conflict.
We'll close our border with the U.S. now, you mean?
Okay, and I think we'll have, why don't we have the next question as well, and we'll wrap up. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. My question is for Deputy Foreign Minister Azimov. It's his comment about compromises should not be unilateral, and so I was just wondering what compromises is Azerbaijan ready to make regarding Mr. Kramer's comments about radio liberty and its,
about
the broadcasts of radio liberty, and what compromises is it willing to make to resume those broadcasts, as well as compromises for the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Thank you.
You ask about any compromise in the world I have to address, or
No, he was
just regarding the
you ask about
resumption.
compromises in NK or compromise on broadcast or all together?
Just those two, just conflict, the
two.
conflict as well as the resumption of the broadcasts.
Okay, thank you. I'm first going to turn to David Kramer, and I'm just going to say something which he'll probably elaborate on. Jackson-Vanik is not an obstacle to anyone joining the WTO, and he'll explain that to you, but that's a misconception, okay?
Well, actually, let me say two things, and I'll be brief because I realize we're standing between you and lunch. But first of all, I fully support lifting 907. It was the policy before. Can't imagine it's been a change in administration policy under the Obama administration, and it's something that needs to be worked more aggressively with Congress. Similarly, I fully support graduation of Azerbaijan from Jackson-Vanik. I frankly support graduation, I think, of all the countries in the region from Jackson-Vanik that have not yet received graduation. Getting Ukraine graduated was an accomplishment, but there are some, and Angela's point is absolutely right, because I'll give you an example. Moldova, which is a member of the WTO, last I checked, and my information may be dated, had not been graduated from Jackson-Vanik. I hate to say this, and I hate to air dirty laundry in front of, well, this will be off the record, right? It frankly is more neglect. And I say that from the Bush administration. I think in fairness to the Obama administration, this has just not been an issue at the top of the agenda, given everything else on the president's plate. But my hope is that over time the administration will raise these issues with Congress and that we will see more progress. I happen to be a strict constructionist, I guess is a term, on Jackson-Vanik, which is it had a purpose of connecting trade issues with immigration, in particular of Jews from the Soviet Union. Countries in the region have been in compliance with the original purpose of Jackson-Vanik, and I think it's time to reflect that by graduation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, on the first issue, we shall not close the border with the United States. In this case,
hold on, wait a minute.
Second, the issue of Turkish-Armenian rapprochement in general and the issue of opening borders between Turkey and Armenia, as I understand, are two different things. Or rather, opening of the border is one of final steps in this process of rapprochement. Now they started with, first of all, visionary approaches, then they have elaborated a concept, then they have shaped it in a text. Fine. We have said our position, you know that, and we have said also the possible outcomes of such unilateral, isolated development. Possible impacts of such isolated development will definitely confront interests of the United States. Should I go into details of that? Don't think so, but it will affect the relationship between Azerbaijan and Turkey. It will affect the settlement process. It will affect generally those opportunities which could be effectively built up in case of combined approach. And what we are trying to explain, and sometimes with certain, let's say, progress to American side, that the time is ripe now to do things for the settlement. And the process between Turkey and Armenia has its own time and procedural regulations. And I am not speaking on behalf and for Turkish Parliament, but I think this is a long process. Don't run too far. The compromises, I tried to link logically the compromises on broadcasting and compromise on NK, and I couldn't, I'm sorry. As for broadcast, there are some certain principled positions, and there are certain technical opportunities. I am not member of Broadcast Committee of Azerbaijan, therefore it's not my business to judge on that. And I cannot simply encourage you by saying, of course there is a possibility. I don't say that. But I think Azerbaijani side never rejected a dialogue, never rejected a normal approaches, and never rejected a partnership. Compromise on NK, as I said earlier, there is no unilateral solution, there is no unilateral compromise. Azerbaijan has widely, extensively, publicly expressed its position on what compromises in the conformity with the principles of international law would mean for us. And I think that once we consider a bridge between two maximalist positions of Azerbaijan and Armenia, where Azerbaijan is standing for, let's say, complete subordination and central administration and sovereignty and territorial integrity with regard to NK region. Then Azerbaijan and Armenia is standing on separation and so-called independence. Azerbaijan is passing its part of the bridge, saying we are ready to find a compromise on a self-rule within the territorial integrity. So in a way, this takes us to not vertical subordination, but some lines of cooperation within the territorial integrity with a self-ruling authorities. But don't forget, please, that there are Azerbaijanis as well in NK. And there's another, let's say, element of this process where two communities are equally, let's say, empowered to and have a right to expect a status and whatever guarantees to be provided for them. The same way, Armenia is expected to take its part of the bridge and to come to the middle ground, leaving the maximalist position of separation and claiming territory of Azerbaijan, and coming to the mid ground of the bridge, meeting Azerbaijan, respecting territorial integrity of my country, and trying to jointly elaborate a status which will be feasible, which will be fitting to the interests of both communities, Azerbaijanis, including INK region.
Please join me, thank you, in thanking both of our speakers for a very spirited and open discussion. Thank you both very much.